Hi everyone, I'm Steve Stoller.
And I'm Shannah Haley, and this is Inside Plano, where we take you behind the scenes of our city.
We'll introduce you to the faces and places who help make this a great place to live.
And give us lots of reasons to love Plano. Hi, Steve.
Hello, Shannah.
Well, you know what? It's been an interesting April. We're heading into May and talk about some serious rain. I mean, all the time. Terrible storms in April, and I'm over it.
We got those April showers that you always hear about.
That's true. And you know, some of those actually triggered our activation of our warning sirens too. I mean, so there was some pretty severe weather this month.
It's always amazing to me, Shannah, how confused people get over the warning sirens. And I think it's because a lot of people come to North Texas from other places. And in other places where there are frequent tornadoes, the sirens mean one thing. That's not the case in Plano and North Texas for most cities.
I can totally identify with that. I grew up in Kansas, learned to spot tornadoes as a child. My dad took me to tornado spotting school, and we were the kind of people that I tell our Plano residents, please don't be me. You know, we'd sit out on the porch, wait till the weather got really bad, and then we would go downstairs into the basement to take shelter.
There's one particular meteorologist, I don't want to name him, but he seems to give the city a hard time for our outdoor warning sirens. He came from Iowa, and again, in the Midwest and Iowa, the tornado warning sound for tornadoes. They don't even call them outdoor warning sirens, they call them tornado sirens.
That's right, but you know, down in Florida, they're used for hurricanes as well, so they do not mean the same thing everywhere.
But of course here they mean we sound them when we have hail, that's 1.5 inches or in diameter or larger. We have storm spotters that are trained, that are out in the community. If they see a tornado in Plano or a neighboring city and it's approaching us, we sound the sirens. Winds, when there's a severe thunderstorm warning that are higher than 70 miles per hour, and a tornado warning that's actually issued by the National Weather Service. Those are the 4 simple criteria. People seem to forget that those are the 4 things. But here's the key. They're called outdoor warning sirens for a reason. They're meant for people outdoors. You know, we used a voice messaging system in addition to the whales. And I don't mean the whales that swim in the ocean.
Not humpback, like I saw when I was in Hawaii, no.
So the voice message was a little bit disconcerting. And what happens is, if you're inside the house, it's blurred, it's garbled, and it's very difficult to understand what's being said on those speakers. A lot of people are going outside of their homes. I know you and I have talked about it. You've done it, I've done it. You hear, and you can't understand what's being said. You go outside. That's the last thing we want people to do. We want them inside the safety of their homes, taking shelter, getting more information about the weather situation. Too many people are walking outdoors, you know, to try and decipher what's being said. So we've transitioned away from the voice messages. And from this point forward, it's wail only.
And how long does it wail when there is severe weather?
3 minutes.
3 minutes.
And the sirens are going to go off in all of Plano, not just a part of Plano that currently has the storm. So it's for the entire city.
And that's, just so the listeners understand, that's not because we're incompetent, you know, and we can't have a divided system to activate in particular areas. It's because storm weather is very unpredictable. You know, I mean, our meteorologists do get a hard time because you know, they might say in April they predicted baseball-size hail to hit the Dallas-Fort Worth region. We certainly, in fact, I don't think in Plano we saw hail at all. If it was nominal at most, certainly not enough to even sound the sirens. Well, you know, were they just misinformed, or did the weather change? The answer is the weather changed. You know, there's a lot of science to it, and then there's a lot of just unpredictability. Weather does what weather does. So instead of sounding sirens just in one particular part of the city, we sound them throughout the city. So it is entirely possible that your house may see rain, whereas my house might see hail. And I can tell you, I've been in my house for 10 years. My husband and I have actually lived within the same major city block area for nearly 20 years. And there's something about the block that we live within. We have only seen pea-size hail. even in storms where we've had major hail that have done a lot of damage in Plano, we've only seen pea-size hail. So, it would be possible for my neighbors and myself to say, well, those sirens, we didn't need them. The weather wasn't bad. Where, just 4 blocks over, significant hail damage. So it's better to be safe than sorry. And like I told a lot of our residents in next door, in the middle of some of the worst storms that we were preparing for, I would rather any day over-prepare for a storm that doesn't materialize than to not prepare at all and have severe weather strike. It's just smart to be prepared.
Absolutely. Weather is not a perfect science. And 30 miles, think about this, 30 miles when you're looking at a massive map is nothing.
Right.
It's a sliver of space. 30 miles can determine whether or not you get large hail, whether or not you get ice and snow. 30 miles, that's all. A storm can move 30 miles, and that, the grand scheme of things, that's barely anything.
Absolutely.
So, these guys, they always predict weather to try and give us warning and to try and prepare us. But, weather doesn't always cooperate.
That's right. But I can tell you one thing that does cooperate in Mother Nature, and that's when we get a lot of rain, and as the old saying goes, April showers bring May flowers, and there is something really beautiful popping up all around the city of Plano.
Wildflowers.
Yes, and particularly the ones that I love the most are the bluebonnets, but of course Indian paintbrush are out as well, and a billion other flowers that I don't know the name of, but they're so delightful. And in fact, they actually made me late to church one day because I went out for a run and saw my first bluebonnets in April and just got so excited that, I know this sounds weird, but I kept running to find out where there are other patches where they were up, because it's wonderful to see them. It just changes your whole mentality, and it reminds you that even in the middle of a big city, nature finds a way. And for those of you who may be wanting to take those spring photos, the aptly named Bluebonnet Trail that goes east to west across the north central side of our city is a fabulous place to find really, really thick fields of bluebonnets right now.
When you saw tulips, Shannah, was it at that point that you realized that you had run all the way to Holland?
That's right. I just was like, it's time to come back. You're just, what explanation do you give? Anyway, bluebonnets, not the only thing blooming in Plano. We'll have our arts and culture manager on later on, but, it kind of is the start of this huge blooming calendar of fun things to do. You want to talk about that a bit?
Absolutely. I love music. And I host the Courtyard Texas Music Theory. I can't talk. The Courtyard Texas Music Series.
In theory, he hosts it, that is.
So last year, the Shiny Ribs came.
Okay.
And anyone who's ever seen the Shiny Ribs, they are just a lot of fun, so fun to watch, high energy. Kevin Russell's the front man. Well, this is a different version of the Shiny Ribs, and there's many different versions of Kevin Russell and his bands. This one is called Kevin Russell and the Shiny Soul Sisters Trio. He is an amazing performer. The way he moves on the stage is just something that has to be seen to believed. The songs are all laced with this magical realism and really novel interpretations of popular songs, old and new. Songs from George Jones, TLC, Leadbelly, T-Pain, true art that runs throughout. He's really Burl Ives meets Al Green, if you can imagine that. Hank Jr. meets Teddy Pendergrass. Wendell Berry meets Chuck Berry. He leads the Shiny Ribs, and like I said, their concerts are like nothing else you've ever seen.
You do talk about music with me a lot when we're back in the office. You are a music lover across genres. It's fascinating to me, of all of the Courtyard Texas Music Series performers, there are a couple of standouts that you talk about a lot. Anytime Zane Williams comes to stage, you talk about that. But Shiny Ribs, I think the first time you saw them was last year, 2018, and they definitely made an impression, because we've talked about that performance several times since then. Made me a little envious that I missed out. So that was Thursday, May 2nd, I believe you said, right? Mm-hmm. Well, that concert, so Thursday leading into the weekend, that really kicks off what feels like an exceptionally busy 7 days. After May 2nd, there's a date coming up that any Star Wars fan would know.
May the 4th.
That's right, May the 4th.
Be with
And
you.
that's exactly right. And Harrington Library is hosting a May the 4th Be With You event on May 4th, of course. So you can come to Harrington, celebrate Star Wars, test your knowledge of Star Wars trivia, and participate in some pretty fun hands-on activities. So that's a good one to go to.
May 4th is also a significant date because it's the day we open summer registration for Plano Parks and Recreation. Remember that summer is a popular time for swimming lessons, summer camps, gymnastics, and other activities. So don't wait to get signed up because your preferred class times might be gone. We'll drop the registration link, as we always do, in our show notes.
Yes, show notes, popular place to go. You know, listeners, we never talk politics on this show. This show is about city life, and if you're watching the video, you'll see Steve's reaction here, you know, grateful to let politics be to the side, because we really want to talk about maybe government and the way that the city operates, things that impact your daily life. But we would strongly encourage you, May 4th, again, that's a Saturday. That is a general election date. And for Plano, we have several items on the ballot. There's a bond referendum with multiple propositions. It's not a large bond referendum, 45 million, I think, but go to the show notes to verify that. I don't want to maybe misstate that, but there are 4 city council positions, there are Plano ISD board positions, there are college trustees. So it's an important election. And Steve, this was shocking to me, but you and I kind of did some math during the last general election, right after the presidential campaign, just to kind of see how many people were even registered to vote in Plano. Do you remember us kind of looking at those stats? It was interesting because we always, in the communications department, really do a big push. We want you to get registered to vote. We think it's an important part of being a citizen in America. Get registered to vote. And I thought, you know, do we need to continue doing this messaging? So we worked with Collin County and with Denton County. Remember, a little portion of Plano is actually in Denton County. And our question to them was, out of the people who are eligible to vote, because remember, there are people under 18, there are people who are here on work visas, so not everybody who lives here can actually vote for a variety of reasons. But out of the people who are eligible to vote, and we were able to get that information from our demographer in the planning department, you know, just kind of a rough guesstimate, how many of those folks were actually already registered to vote? And we learned that with about a 3% degree of certainty, 92% of our eligible voters in Plano were already registered to vote.
It's amazing and remarkable. But the terrible thing is, while 92% are eligible to vote, a small fraction of that 92% actually come out and vote in local elections.
Absolutely. We'll see far higher turnout in a presidential election year, but for an election like this, where it's just local issues really on the ballot primarily, or regional ones as well, we don't see that kind of turnout in Plano. We have a lot of Plano pride. We feel like if 92% of you are who are eligible are registered to vote, we'd like to see you at the polls. Your input really sets the direction for the city. So we'd like to see you vote, and please, you know, hashtag on Twitter or on Facebook, let us know that you voted and you showed your Plano pride.
All the activity on May 4th makes me feel like that's the busiest day of the month, and actually one of the busiest days of the year. But on May 6th, which is a Monday, we're having our annual Senior Information and Wellness Fair. Head to the Plano Event Center from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Admission is free and everyone is welcome to attend. Free health screenings, door prizes, and much more.
Yeah, that's a great event. Later that same week, we're going to hold a town hall meeting. That'll be on Thursday, May 9th. It starts at 7 p.m. Now, we've talked about town halls before. There are a lot of ways to participate. You can phone in, you can come in person, you can ask questions and watch on social media. We take questions from Nextdoor, Twitter, and Facebook. And this time we're actually talking about what I feel like is one of the more popular topics in Plano, transportation. So we're talking roads, we're talking highways, we're talking DART, we're talking light timing. So I know you have questions. Hopefully we'll be able to have some answers. So 7 o'clock on May 9th.
All right, Shannah, who said this famous statement? Thank you. On behalf of the boys and myself, I hope we pass the audition.
Okay, I'm like really embarrassed because I'm not a huge enough fan to know, but that is either, well, no, it's not Ringo. Was it John Lennon that
You
said
got
it?
it.
Okay.
It was John Lennon, and it was during the recording of Get Back
Wow.
on the Let It Be album. So you know I'm talking about the Beatles, of
Yes.
course. Beatles Night, this is one of my favorite events of the year, returns on Saturday, May 11th. A Hard Night's Day, one of the best-known Beatles cover bands in North Texas. They've played at the Cavern Club, the Kaiser Keller in Hamburg, where the Beatles actually played. They actually recorded in Abbey Road Studios in Studio 2, where the Beatles used to record. They have a catalog of more than 200 songs. They're able to give an in-depth, genuine Beatles experience. Adults, $17. Seniors are $14. Kids 6 to 12, $12. And kids that are 5 years old and younger are free. The great thing again about the Red Tail Pavilion, formerly known as the Amphitheater at Oak Point Park, you can bring in picnic baskets, coolers, blankets, lawn chairs, all encouraged, BYOB, and unfortunately no pets, please.
Yeah, you know, I mean, that is a great venue, but pets just kind of add to the madness when the event is that popular, so we ask that you keep them at home. Now, Steve, this is something you might want to do because you constantly bedazzle me with your depth of knowledge about the Beatles. So I think you and a group of friends should get together because the night before there is a trivia night at McCall Plaza and it's a Beatles themed edition. So it's a perfect time to test your knowledge against other people in Plano. Like, are you King Beatle? I don't know.
Well, I'm not King Beatle, but my nickname is the King of Useless Information.
Man, the gauntlet has been thrown, Plano. And listen, there are trophies, prizes, and of course, Steve's pride at stake in this little competition. And I do know that one of the prizes is a pair of tickets to the concert. So that's a great way. If you haven't picked up your tickets, go to McCall Plaza the night before.
Now, if you're planning to get out in the garden as the sun comes out, you know, choosing Texas-friendly plants that are well adapted to our area and weather condition makes a huge difference in the success of your landscape. Our environmental education team is hosting a Smart Yards class on May 18th. You'll learn about soil preparation and see which plants work best in our clay soil and our North Texas climate. You can also tour Plano's teaching garden to see drought-tolerant native plants up close.
I do love that garden. Sometimes I go over to the Environmental Education Center just to kind of lose myself in the plants, get a little bit of a break from chaos. But anyway, last month, you know, we talked a lot about Easter egg hunts throughout the city. Unfortunately, some of those ended up being canceled because of the weather, but we are not done hunting for treasure. We're going to ask you to join us at Muhlenbeck Rec Center on May 18th at 9:30 a.m. for an outdoor aquatic treasure hunt. There are going to be toys for all ages, and kids are searching for treasure in the pool, and the depths of the pool will range from 1 foot to 3.5 feet deep. Each participant will get a mesh bag for collecting their treasures. There are a lot of details associated with this, including some parental supervision requirements, and of course you need to pre-register for this event so we can plan accordingly. So we've put all of that information in the show notes.
Sounds like great fun. Thinking about the pool reminds me of two hugely important dates in Plano, May 24th and May 25th.
Yes, students and maybe a few nervous parents, repeat with me, May 24th, last day of school for Plano ISD students.
And May 25th, the city's pool's open, so bring on summer.
Yeah, so parents, we've told you, there's a ton going on for your kids, from those parks and recreation classes to concerts, much, much more than that. If you have a teen, though, who's looking to get involved in volunteering, they're interested in building some skill sets, maybe they're thinking ahead to preparing for those college applications and kind of positioning themselves in terms of development, and if they're interested in helping shape the experience at Plano Library for other teen users, what you need to do is have them find out what it might take to join the Library Teen Advisory Board. It's a very popular board to be part of. The Teen Street team is going to host an open house at Haggard Library on May 28th. It's a good time to go learn that information.
And of course, we can't forget the 18th airspace at Haggard Library. Our artist in residence is Paul Cadgill. He's a software engineer by profession and an artist at heart. Pretty will introduce Worli folk art painting of India, teaching the use of symbols and how to tell a story through painting at Worli Painting on May 11th. Create a felt bird ornament with Pretty at Felt Workshop on May 25th.
Yes, yeah, just to clarify, that's Pretty Gadgo. So she'll be our featured artist. At the end of the month, of course, it's kind of that last holiday before we move in. It's Memorial Day, May 27th. And so don't forget, a lot of city offices are closed and services shift days.
And that's a great time to sign up for those trash and recycling collection alerts.
I can't believe how many people have signed up for that. Just a side note there, we had this goal of having 10% of our residential trash, what would you call them, subscribers? Customers, yeah, thank you. Customers subscribe to that within a year of launching that service. So there are about 71,000 homes or individual residential users where trash services is collected. We already have met that number. So an incredibly popular reminder, it emails you, it texts you, it lets you know, or as some houses do, it texts your teenage child so that they know today is the day you need to take the trash out. You know, the other thing on Memorial Day that I encourage a lot of people to do, they don't realize that it's scheduled, special event, Sunset at Memorial Park. Have you ever attended that, Steve?
Yes, it's a great event.
Yeah.
Very nice, very solemn, but very, very meaningful.
Absolutely. It, of course, you know, Memorial Day is when we remember and honor individuals who served with the armed forces that lost their lives. So we're specifically at this event honoring Plano residents who died while serving in the armed forces. It begins at 7 p.m. with the arrival of the patriotic motorcycle riders. Bagpipes are playing. It's an annual event. You know, it grows every year as people kind of learn about it. It's at Memorial Park in Plano. That's on Custer Road, just south of Spring Creek. Several organizations help host it. Like Steve said, very, very moving. And I think it puts the focus of Memorial Day back where it belongs. I know we all like to have a day off of work and barbecues with the family, but there's actually a reason for Memorial Day, and it's good to stop and say thank you and honor those lives lost.
Our special guest today is Michelle Hawkins, our dear friend, and the Arts and Events Manager for Parks and Recreation. Michelle, welcome.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
We always like to start by asking folks who work at the city, what is one thing about them that we don't know? Tell us something about yourself that we don't already know.
Just one thing, huh?
Well, I know there's probably hundreds of things.
I guess one thing that probably most people don't know is that, well, maybe two. I've got two.
Okay.
Most people don't know that I actually had a career in art. I was a lighting designer by trade and have my Bachelor of Fine Arts and with emphasis in lighting design. I was going to go on to rule the world as a lighting designer, and I was just going to stop off at the city of Plano for a little while and have some insurance. And 15 years later, I'm still here, but yeah, I've loved every minute of it. And I guess maybe the other thing is, you know, in your 20s, you take on tons of jobs, right? Like we all had multiple jobs at times, and I worked at a rock climbing gym, and I was an instructor and guide at a rock climbing gym too.
Well, I'm sure your background in the arts translates well with your role now, which is Arts and Events Manager. Tell us a little bit about what does the Arts and Events Manager do for the city?
Oh, most days I go to a lot of meetings, but so I manage different divisions in the city, Plano Stages Presents, and Volunteers in Plano, and special events. And what we do is we make sure that events stand up to Plano's level of safety and public health, even if there are events or if they're a third-party event. We want to make sure that they're all going to be safe for attendees and meet our expectations.
What are the venues and the stages that actually belong to the city?
Sure, we have 4 venues. 2 of them are indoor. It's Courtyard Theater, which is probably our well-known one. That one's our workhorse. It's constantly being rented or used in whichever which way. And right next door to it is our smaller theater. It's our black box space called the Cox Playhouse. Those are both in downtown Plano. Then we have McCall Plaza, which is our outdoor stage in downtown. It's right across from the dart tracks. It's kind of tucked in there between the dart tracks and Fillmore Pub. And our other outdoor space is the Red Tail Pavilion, formerly known as the Amphitheater at Oak Point Park, and it's across from Collin College, across Spring Creek, where the launch field is for Balloon Fest.
You know, anyone who hasn't been to any of these venues really needs to check them out, because I'll tell you, the venues are fabulous. Courtyard Theater especially used to be the old gymnasium for the first high school in Plano, right?
Absolutely,
And it's
yeah,
just the way it's decorated and set up, it's such a great venue for music. Of course, we have the Courtyard Theater Texas Music Series there, and some of the bands that come in, everybody comments about what a great venue that is.
Yeah, and it's really held up. I mean, it opened as as Courtyard Theater in 2002, and people still come in and think it was just renovated and just reopened because it's held up so well. The design for it's just so far has been evergreen. So
yeah, and McCall Plaza, our newest venue. I mean, what a great place to sit outdoors and listen to music. I've gone to several concerts there. And my personal favorite is the one that used to be known as the Amphitheater at Oak Point Park. And I've seen many shows there, and the atmosphere with the trees behind the stage, and if you get a nice breeze coming in there, it's such a perfect venue to be outdoors.
Setting, yeah.
And speaking of that, yeah. Why did the city decide to rename the amphitheater at Oak Point Park?
So the amphitheater project was just a project name while it was being constructed. You know, like this is our project that we're redoing. It's the amphitheater, and it happens to be in Oak Point Park. And it just kind of stuck. So when it opened, it was Amphitheater at Oak Point Park. But that whole area is becoming the Oak Point area. And it doesn't really define where the amphitheater is, or you know, it kind of gets lost. The Oak Point Park's 800 acres, so where is the amphitheater in Oak Point Park? The other thing is that we were getting a lot of questions about what an amphitheater is. I don't know that that's a well-known name anymore, and then it's kind of a long name, Amphitheater at Oak Point Park. So we thought, well, maybe it's time to update it and rebrand it and give it something a little more of an identity. And so we did this kind of crowdsourcing project. Did you want to hear about that?
Yeah, my next question was going to be, what is the process that led you to arrive at Redtail?
Sure, we really took a unique approach. I met with Shannah, because the marketing handles all the branding, communications department does. And so we thought, well, why don't we get some community engagement in this? And so we came up with some words that defined to us what that venue was. And then Shannah just kind of threw something out there on social and said, who would like to be part of this word game, this word association game? And had a group of people that were really excited about it. And so sent them a couple of words that we had come up with, and they gave us a ton of words to go through. And we had a committee that kind of went through that. We came up with different renditions, we brainstormed, and narrowed it down to, I think it was like 3 or 4 or 5 or something. And from that, did we send it back out to the group again? We did. Okay, so we did send it back out to the group again just to get their thoughts on it, and that narrowed it down more. And then we did some internal polls with city staff, and then we took it to the park board and got their recommendation, and then we took it to council, and council had put a committee together about how to naming facilities. And they went with everybody's recommendation with Redtail, which is, it honors the red-tailed hawk that's been found in Oak Point Park.
Absolutely, you see a lot of red-tailed hawks flying over the park, and not only that, but the group that's out of Collin County, the Blackland Prairie Raptor Center, has actually released several birds of prey, including red-tailed hawks at the park.
And they're beautiful. It's so cool to see one.
Well, let me ask you this, Michelle. How does the city work with various arts and special event organizations that host events in Plano?
So I sit on a couple of boards with the Plano Arts Coalition, and I handle the arts designation for downtown Plano. So we work with them in those kind of ways. But then our local arts groups also rent our facilities, so we work with them on their events. And a lot of city staff that work for Plano Stages are professionals in the entertainment industry. So we also help them on some of the technical stuff that they might not know best practices for to make their productions a little bit more professional. On the special event side, those are much larger events typically. And so we work with them on the logistics, the safety, the public health. We make sure that what they're doing and what they're providing to the community is going to be safe for the attendees. Because typically when an attendee goes to an event, they're not thinking about what's the weather going to do, what happens if we have to evacuate this event. And that's what me and my staff take care of. And we communicate with all the other city departments on how to make those things happen in a safe manner if it ever had to happen.
What does a typical day look like for you?
I don't think any day's typical. It's like you, Steve.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
It keeps me on my toes.
Right?
If I show up and my email doesn't ask, hey, we want to ride an elephant down Windhaven, or we want to bring bull riding to Plano, then most of my days is going through email. I always have some kind of overarching project, like our special events ordinance redo, and I'm on one of the committees for the Census 2020, so I have some of these longer projects that I have to work on as well. But the Plano Stages Present side of our division, we create, produce, design events, and a lot of them are going to be at McCall Plaza. So we have a lot of smaller events, and then we have some that we consider our bigger events, and so constantly checking in on those, because whenever you plan an event, there's so many details that you have to go through and make sure are right, because if one falls apart, then it's noticeable to your attendees. And so we're constantly checking in on those and making sure that they're advertised well. So that's a typical day, is nursing those events, checking in with the staff, answering emails, in those unique things that our event planners like to bring into Plano, and working with those. And then we work with all the other departments to see if we can even make those things happen.
You've been involved with so many events over the years at the City of Plano. Does one stand out as your favorite?
You mentioned Courtyard Texas Music Series, and I guess that's the first one that we really kind of produced ourselves. Well, I guess Beatles was one that we produced ourselves, but Courtyard Texas Music Series was one of the ones that I handled specifically. So that started in 2012, but in 2011 we had a group of citizens come to us. It was about 20, 30 citizens that came to us and said, we want to see an event at Courtyard that's geared towards adults and not children's programming, because we're a rental house at Courtyard. And Courtyard originally was set for Plano Repertory Theater, which was kind of our local community theater organization, and they went bankrupt in 2005. And so when they left, it just became a rental house. So this group came to us in 2011 and said, we want to see some programming for adults. And they were looking at Grand Ole Opry stuff. They had ideas for another theater company. I was like, well, then we'd have to bump some of our long-standing clients that rent this space. And I was like, that's not really feasible. So we came up with Courtyard Texas Music Series. And so it's one Thursday night a month from March to November, featuring a regional country act, a Texas country act. And we didn't know what our demographics was going to be. We didn't know how well it was going to be received. So that very first one in 2012 sold out within like 2 weeks of announcing tickets. And we were so excited and impressed, and I guess that one was probably my very favorite. We had Radney Foster, who was incredible. He was very gracious, and he loved the venue, and he was great with the crowd, and Zane Williams opened for him. But we had kind of sourced that with the citizens and got into the music community to make that happen, and it was one of my first babies to make happen, so I was very proud of that one.
Great. Why do you think arts and events are so important to a community?
So, National Endowment for the Arts and Arts for Americans for the Arts have done lots of studies on how art affects people. And some of the points that stand out to me is, like, whenever kids are introduced to art, they typically have better grades, they have a lower dropout rate, they're more creative, and some of those things affect adults as well. As far as arts kind of creates an empathy, like you understand what another person's perspective in little bits, or at least you look at it in somebody else's perspective. So it's one of those chances to develop empathy and an emotional intelligence, because whether you like it or not, art is subjective. So I might hate a piece, you might love a piece, but what's going to happen whenever you look at a performance or a piece of art, you're going to try to see what you're going to have some kind of emotion, right? Emotional reaction to it. And you're going to try to see what that artist was thinking or what that artist was trying to convey. And it makes you slow down and think about somebody else's perspective. And I think that's important for all of us to be able to do And so having it out in the community, if you're not a person who thinks that they like art, then you're not going to seek it out. But if it's out in the community and you're surrounded by it, then you're still exposed to it. And so I think that that's very important to a community. And then events, you know, placemaking is the buzzword for municipalities these days. And I think events definitely do that. They bring a community together to celebrate whatever the event is about. And you have something in common at that moment, right? And these are the people that you live around. These are your neighbors. And from a city perspective, it gives us a touch point with our community. So that way we see what they like and what they want and who they are outside of a regular city business. And so it's fun and it's interesting, and I get to meet our citizens on a different level than most people.
Let me ask you one final question, Michelle. Shannah and I on our podcast, Inside Plano, we always, every month, focus on arts and events that are coming up for that time frame. What is the best way for our residents and others to keep tabs on what's ahead in terms of arts and events?
I would go to our Facebook. It's probably the hub for all of our events and all of our, you know, if something gets canceled to weather or something like that. And so that's facebook.com/Plano Arts. It's Plano Arts on Twitter and Instagram also. And then our website's planostages.com. You can always sign up for our e-newsletter too, and that always highlights events that are coming up.
Where on Facebook do you go? Plano Arts and Events?
It's just Plano Arts, so at Plano Arts. Yep.
Very good. Michelle, thank you so much for joining us on Inside Plano today.
Thank you, Steve.
Once again, Michelle Hawkins, Arts and Events Manager for Parks and Recreation in the City of Plano. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Well, Steve, that was a great interview with Michelle. You're right. She is our dear friend. We work together just all the time. I feel like I see Michelle 3 or 4 times a week working on different events. And of course, you know, it's a month later, but I'm still kind of coming off the glow of TEDx Plano. It was a great event. And Michelle, I always tell all of the performers and our volunteers, hey, you know, I curate that event, but Michelle bosses. On the day of the event, Michelle is our boss, and she makes that event just so magical. So I love working with her.
She's very good at what she does. And you know, it's really easy to see her passion for the arts. I mean, she told us that she has a background in arts.
Clear.
That really does translate to her position with the city and how she handles it. She loves it.
Yeah, you know, and she's proven to be a good partner back for our communications and community outreach, media relations team too, because there's something about having an arts background where you are naturally curious and naturally creative, you know, and so she helps spur creative thinking. I know she talked about the red-tailed hawk, not the red-tailed hawk, the red-tailed pavilion, named after the eponymous, I guess I should say, red-tailed hawk that flies in Oak Point Park and many parts of Plano. That project really was a partnership with our team where she came in and said, we want to get the community involved, but we don't necessarily want people to know what venue we're thinking about renaming, but we're wanting to have people feel invested. And so that took us down a whole different path of engaging with folks. And we had this huge group of people who were passionately involved in brainstorming for something, and they just had ideas that scoped the direction, and I don't think we would have ever ended up at Red Tail for the name of that facility without the community's involvement and Michelle's leadership.
You know, my suggestion didn't go anywhere.
What was it? Because I just don't remember.
It was the Shannah Haley Pavilion at Oak Point Park in Plano, Texas.
You know, I lobbied for that one hard, and I got shot down pretty early on, which is probably why I didn't remember, blocked the bad memory. Anyway, well, how about we talk about our one thing for this month? All right,
Definitely.
Well, mine is a little nerdy, but I am totally not going to apologize for it. Our Plano public library system. I think a lot of people don't realize all of the value that comes with having a library card, which is free to Plano residents. You just sign up, get a card, and then a lot of people are like, okay, I can go check out a book. Or if you're maybe a more sophisticated user, you know that you can get audiobooks, ebooks. It makes it convenient. We've talked before about all of the classes that they offer, how you can do lynda.com. I know you have a great story about a child who learned all of the insides of a person and could recite them as a young child. You love to tell that story, Plano. We're going to save that for another day because that's a great Steve impression. Too great to not include it at some point. But here's one that a lot of people don't know about. You can get access, complete subscriber access to the New York Times online using your own device. if you have a Plano Public Library card. Now, I looked it up because I was like, all right, I know that I can get a couple free articles a month if I want to read, but I can't access the crossword. So what does a free subscription mean? That is $162.75 as of May 1st this year. So that's huge value for my free library card. And I do get access to the crossword. I get access to all articles. I don't hit any kind of limitation. Videos that the Times staff have put together, photos, the international edition. So that's just yet another example of the powerful resources that a simple library card through the Plano Public Library offers our residents.
You know, Shannah, we always talk about accolades, and it seems like Plano is named in a new accolade list every week. It's always something. So we had two big ones come in last month. Plano ranked 41st in America's top 100 safest cities, something that we're not surprised because our crime rate based on the Uniform Crime Stats every year is always extremely low for cities our size. And then in Texas, we were number 2 safest city, only behind Sugar Land.
Why do you think? I mean, you say the crime stats are low, but I don't think those safest city rankings are based purely on crime statistics. There are a lot of things that go into that, right? I mean,
well, there's a lot of different ones that they have a whole different system of criteria, and that they use. I'm not sure of what they used on this particular one, but you know, a lot of it has to do with people's personal feelings of safety too, whether they feel safe in their communities. And when that question is asked, we usually come out very high in Plano. People feel safe living there. You know, a city of more than 280,000 people, you're not going to be immune from crime.
Right.
But comparatively, a city with that number of people in the population, we do very well. We have a very low crime rate.
Yeah, I think people can sometimes forget, you know, because we're buried within this greater Dallas-Fort Worth metro area. If you took Plano out of the Dallas-Fort Worth metro area, we are a large city, I think 69th largest city in America. So that's ahead of a lot of notable cities. You know, we could go through the list and say that means Plano's bigger than X, Y, and Z, places that you wouldn't consider safe. So it is surprising. And I do think about the great work, obviously, that the Plano Police Department, Plano Fire Rescue, our public safety communications, which, you know, most people know as 911, emergency management. They do a wonderful job of public safety. Animal control, also a form of public safety, taking care of us. But it's also neighbors taking care of neighbors.
I was just going to say that, yeah. Our Citizens Patrol has a very high level of participation from people who live in the community that are helping to watch and take care of their own neighborhoods, along with the help of the police department.
Absolutely, and we have CERT, which is the Citizens Emergency Response Team, another hugely popular program. We were talking about sirens earlier in the show. Those are folks, CERT members are folks that are officially trained by our emergency management department and learn all kinds of ways to be better prepared in Plano, and then really take it as their mission to help their neighbors feel safe. And one of the trainers has an incredibly popular video series that I encourage everyone to go to the city's YouTube channel to check out. It's called Ready with Ron, and he shows you. I think it was a funny video, but it was a video that someday I'll probably be glad that I had that useless bit of information. What happens if you're in a car wreck and down power lines, you know, fall on your car? How do you get out of the car safely? And Ron demonstrated that, along with a million other things. What do you do with your pets during a storm? How do you keep them safe? And on and on. So they really do a lot of work to help us feel safe where we live.
We got to talk about the cold. And I'm not talking about the weather. What am I talking about?
You're talking about ice cream, cold, delicious goodness. Because I came back to the office the other day and told you, Steve, I've had the most mind-blowing, wonderful new ice cream experience ever.
To which I reacted, ha.
He's saying that because a new ice cream shop called...
Ha.
And I can't see, you need to use your Spanish because my Spanish is...
Helados.
Yes.
Helados is Spanish for ice cream. And it's right across the street from the Municipal Center, so it's about a 30-second walk across Avenue K. But it's really interesting. It's really different. It really does have a Mexican flavor to it. They even sell the traditional elotes, which is the corn, and they sell mango slices, and you put the chile on the mangoes, and they have, God, I forgot the name of the sauce. It's kind of like a fruity sauce that you put on the mangoes as well. But really, really very, very good.
So basically, Plano, what we're saying is next month we're going to talk about all of the Plano Parks and Rec workout classes, because we've got to compensate for a new shop across the street. But there's also a gelato shop in downtown Plano. But what's surprising to me is, well, maybe it's not. You know, Plano can every now and then get accused of being a little extra, you know, a little over the top. Well, I have to say our ice cream in Plano is definitely a little extra in all of the best ways. There are several new shops that have opened up near where my house is. Steve doesn't live too terribly far away, so I don't know if he wants to discover these places either, but you know, new soft serve places that are incredibly interesting flavor combinations. I'm talking about like avocado soft serve ice cream, pandan chocolate, topped with puffed quinoa. You find all of that at Sugar Pine Creamery. Or if you're just really a cereal lover and you love milk, but you would prefer to have it in ice cream form, you can go to Milky Treats, where they infuse their ice cream with different kinds of cereal. Or if you're into cartoons, you can go down to a new place called Sweet Melodies, where they, you know, put little cartoon characters in their ice cream. Or you can go have a flower shaped in gelato over at, let me see, it's Amarino over at Legacy West. I mean, there are a million different ways. Or if you want to go to a classic place, where is the classic place in Plano other than Dairy Queen, which is very good with their cherry dipped soft serve cone?
Brahms?
Henry's, come on.
Henry's homemade ice cream.
Henry is your very good friend, and he, as
Henry
we all,
Gentry.
that's right, and as we all
Absolutely.
know, ice cream makes you pretty. So,
That's his slogan. He's been saying it for years.
well, and he's not wrong. I mean, I would say that Plano is full of a lot of pretty people, and it's got to be because of that great ice cream that Henry makes, and that he's inspired to have all of these unique and creative places all throughout town.
You know, Henry and I go back more than 20 years. The first time I met Henry, I did a story with him when I was a reporter at Channel 4, and the story that I did was about him buying cases and cases of Girl Scout cookies. He got the thin mint chocolate cookies because
my
once
Lord.
a year, when the cookies would go on sale, he would have a thin mint Girl Scout cookie chocolate ice cream
Oh my gosh.
with pieces of the cookies in it. And we became friends, and now we've known each other more than 20 years after that.
And see, it's dangerous to even talk about Girl Scout cookies too. And this is why Plano, I don't want anyone to know where I live, because all of the Girl Scouts and the Boy Scouts have discovered that Mrs. Haley is a sucker. We do have a no solicitation sign on our door, but it's qualified. It says, you know, if you're our friends, our family, our neighbors, or you are Scouts and PISD students selling goodies, you can stop by. And boy, they figured it out. So I buy and give away, because I do like to eat a few cookies, but I can't say no to a child that's learning how to make an offer, how to encourage me to buy something. It's such a good skill set.
Mrs. Haley, I'm not soliciting. I'm selling Go to Camp Boy Scout cards, which is the most recent thing you bought.
That's right, boy, the Tom Thumb at Parker and Independence. I almost abandoned ship in the parking lot at 8 o'clock when I saw a troop of Boy Scouts, and I just had to get groceries, and I walked up and stopped immediately. You want to buy a $10 camp card? And I said, well, what's a camp card do? And Scout rightly told me, it sends me to camp. And I said, here is your $10.
Well, you have a big heart, so it's not surprising.
Well, it was the sweetest ask, and you know, those kids are doing a good thing, and they're learning great skill sets. And I am not lying, by the way, Steve. My stomach actually started growling when you mentioned the treats across the street. So I'm totally sure that I'm going to stop for something on the way back to the office.
Every time we record this podcast, I always leave, and I'm hungry. How am I ever going to lose weight when we're doing this?
Well, podcast recording days are officially fast until the podcast recording session is over days.
I don't know if Susan, my wife, will understand that, but let's try it.
We'll go with that. But you know, Plano, you do know if we're talking about food, that does mean that we're at the end of the podcast, because we're tossing these scripts in the trash can and dashing out to go get something to eat. Also, you know, I tell you every month, please leave a review for our podcast on whatever your favorite platform is. It helps other people find our little show, and our subscribers are growing each month. So we appreciate those reviews. Keep them coming, and we will talk to you in June.
Take care, everybody.
And that's it for our Inside Plano. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did doing it.
If you have any comments or suggestions, send them to us at askplano@plano.gov. Bye!
Talk to you next month. The Inside Plano podcast is brought to you by the City of Plano and 97.5 KLAK.